what's up you guys, this is Rob from the Gay Guy Plays, and today on the Quick Draw, we're sliding it in for a little action when we take a look at the Telos Boltace. Now, a lot of us look for boosts to certain statistics when it comes to Syndicate or faction upgraded weapons. Whether it's me gushing over critical stats or bumps to base damage, we look to the shifts in specific modifiers to determine how much a weapon is improved in performance. However, the Telos Boltace, with only slight shifts to its actual statistics, definitely puts a different spin on what it means to get a buff. Now, you can pick up the Telos Boltace for 125,000 standing after you've reached rank 5 with the Arbiters of Hexis. Just be aware that it will require Mastery rank 8 to acquire. Now, if you find the Arbiters to be a bit too judgy for your taste, you can always brave the dark and violent wilderness of trade chat and see if you manage to make it out unscathed. Now, its primary damage type is puncture with a very small amount of impact and an even smaller amount of slashing. This makes it perfect against armored and robotic targets, however it does suffer against all forms of corpus shielding. So as always, be sure you're equipping the appropriate elemental combo in order to deal the optimal amount of damage. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, the classic Boltace was a fairly lackluster weapon with its only really interesting feature being its massive slide attack damage. And to be honest with you, the Telos Boltace isn't too far off from the original. As compared to the Boltace, the Arbiters of Hexis variation has gained a 5% critical chance, bringing it to an underwhelming 10% overall, as well as a 0.5% increase to its damage multiplier, topping it out at a respectable 2.0. It's also received a small boost to its attack speed, taking it from 0.917 up to 1.08, and had its damage type shifted, stealing away a little bit of its slashing and going all in on puncture. So as we can see, it's all just slight shifts, but nothing statistically stunning like some of the damage boosts we've had in the rest of the recent released roster. That is of course until we take a look at the unique Syndicate effects that replace the AoE and buff. Now, anytime you use a slide attack, the Telos Boltace emits a radial wave of slashing damage, and when being wielded, passively grants a 20% bonus to parkour maneuvers. Now, I'm not going to test parkour maneuvers because, I don't really care. However, the added velocity is definitely helpful to get you where you need to be in order to get down and dirty. As for the radial damage, this is where things really start to get interesting. Now, just for clarity's sake, the radius of the actual sliding attacks has not increased whatsoever. You will still need to get up close and personal to land the big hits, especially if you have the intent of running this with body count and blood rush, as the radial slash effect doesn't count towards your melee counter. Now, from playtesting, I can confirm that at the moment of this recording, while the initial instance of damage dealt by the radial slash is affected by all standard damage mods, the remaining ticks of slash damage are solely affected by base damage mods, bane mods, and can be amplified via critical damage multipliers, which means that this thing will work perfectly with maiming strike and organ shatter. But do be aware that while body count and blood rush will work for the weapon itself, it has zero effect on the radial slash. Now, in much better news, its innate 10 meter radius is affected by range mods, maxing out at 26 meters with a fully ranked primed reach. However, don't get too excited because the damage dealt is radial, meaning that the further enemies are away from you, the less damage you inflict. Regardless, it is still a very interesting effect that seems to dictate a very specific kind of play. Now, speaking of highly specific things, can we talk? Okay, so my favorite thing about the Telos Boltace is exactly how determined DE was to make this slide attack gimmick work. I mean, if you pay very close attention to all of the tweaks they made, everything was so extremely specific that it was kind of like they were prepping themselves for anal sex. Now, for those of you who don't know, it's not as simple as getting your butthole bleached and taking a shower. This isn't a simple bump to a weapon's base damage. Everything had to fit together like puzzle pieces. First off, you've got the bonus passive to maneuvers, which lets you put yourself in the right place. Next, they bumped the critical chance to 10%, which just so happens to line up perfectly with Maiming Strike's 90% additive boost, so every time you execute a slide attack, you're guaranteed a crit. Then they upped the critical multiplier, which is one of the few ways to increase the radial slash damage. I mean, they plotted this shit out as tightly as my anal sex schedule. 7 AM raisin bran with 2% milk, cause we gotta make that lactose intolerance work for us. An early lunch because we have to stop all solid foods by noon. Then a big cup of coffee to get things moving at 3 PM because we got a date with an enema bag at 4. All just for the fact that we both really wanted to make sliding it in a pleasure. And now that you know why I prefer my sex before my food, let's get back to the quick draw. So all in all, I think I'm going to give the Telos Boltace a thumbs up. It's definitely nice because there are many ways you can approach this effect. You can try to go for a massive AoE status build to keep everything irradiated while you whack off units that you're already up close and personal with, or you can choose to go for something a bit more direct with the Maiming Strike crit build, and maybe test out a sort of hybrid build which focuses on pumping up the slash effect as much as possible. It even comes with an innate dash slot to help you with your modding adventures. Because let's face it, there are a lot of angles of entry for this one, and it would be a crime not to experiment with every single one of them. So thank you all for watching another episode of The Quick Draw. If you haven't already caught it, check out the previous episode on the Sanctum Magistar, as well as my quick overview for all of the new Syndicate melee weapons. Now, don't forget to do all the things that I asked you to do at the end of every one of these, and as always, remember that the dichotomy between butt bleaching and gameplay testing will always be strong, here at A Gay Guy Plays.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying, if it's impractical weapon usage, then you get hit with the Deus Ex Machina character power that comes to save the day out of nowhere, which would be a quad shot. That's 5 shots. That's 5 shots. And here's the thing: if someone picks random ass plot twist that leads to the Deus Ex Machina character power, then you get 6 shots. That's 6 shots all in one. Somebody is gonna die, and I cannot be responsible for that. I can't be responsible for that.
Grow up. Be an adult. Drink your take your shots and just find out.